Welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
We have allowed ourselves to become so disconnected and ignorant about something that is as intimate as the food that we eat.
Be prepared to grow your own for victory.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. I'm your host, Harold Thornborough, and I'm glad you're back with us again this week. And yeah, I know the podcast is probably coming out a little bit later today than normal. We've had a kind of a rough spell around here. We had a dog that's our family friend we've had for many years, and he's, been sick for a little bit. But yeah, today we lost him, and it's been kind of a tough day for us. But you know what? It's part of life. It's even part of homesteading. You have the loss of animals and things, and I don't make light of it, but also I'm not going to let it, change the flow of life too much. It's one of them things, and my wife takes it a lot harder than I do, of course, but it is something we've had to deal with today. But it's just the way things are, and I appreciate the kind words, and I mentioned it in the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group earlier, and had some kind words from some folks, and I appreciate that, and loved hearing other people talk about the pets they've had in the past as well, and it was encouraging to know that these animals, they give us a lot of love, and it's awesome to be able to return the favor and give them a great life. And yeah, they don't live a long time. You're going to see that a few times in your life. This is the third one we've experienced this with, and it's never easy. It's just never easy, but we'll get past it, and we'll remember him fondly, and we'll just miss him. But thank you to all of you who have had kind words about it. But hey, I want to up the mood a little bit here. This is a podcast, I don't want to bring everybody down. I'm here to talk about homesteading, and today I've got a great guest on. Jill May is going to be joining me, and she's a homesteader in Ohio, and you'll hear about her journey here in a few minutes. But yeah, she has a lot to tell us about what she's doing over there, and I think she has some real encouraging words to say. And I just enjoyed talking to her, so I think you'll enjoy listening to our conversation. So let's just jump right into that. Today I'm joined by Jill May. Jill is part of our Homestead Front Porch Facebook group, and she and her family homestead over in Ohio. It's kind of nice to have somebody a little closer to home right now. I'm so used to talking to people in Canada and everywhere else. Jill, welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to talk to you this morning.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Could you just, I ask everyone who first comes on the show, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into homesteading?
Sure. We are probably, I'm guessing, like I said, you said not too far from you. We're in southwest Ohio, close to the Ohio-Indiana border. And we have 2 acres here, and we have lived here about 7.5 years. And I'd say my journey probably started when I was a kid. I was influenced by my grandparents, like a lot of people in their garden and snapping beans on the back porch with Grandma on weekends. And but when we moved here, we really had an opportunity to expand on the smaller gardens and things that we had, in our smaller homes before. And it's been a lot of fun. I have my husband and my son, who's a teenager. He is probably not as into it as he used to be, but he's into baseball and band and things like that. But yeah, really, it started with I think, like maybe a lot of people, it started with the garden. And when we bought the property, it had a very large fenced-in garden. And my husband asked if we were going to shrink it down a little bit. And I said no. And it's 110 by 35, and I think he was feet. And I think we were both a little intimidated by it.
Yeah.
But that was probably our first big step, was the garden and learning how to process it.
Yeah, that's an important part of it. You can grow it all you want, but if you don't know what to do with it afterwards.
Exactly. And I was a little afraid of pressure canning, and it took me a while to get into it. I had heard the horror stories of an aunt who had green beans in her attic for a year after she blew the lid off her pressure canner, and I was so nervous about it, but it's ended up being a wonderful thing, and I do love to do it. So the garden came first, and then I think then really learning how to can it and process it came next. Definitely the water bath canning I thought is the best place to start.
Oh yeah,
at least
definitely.
It was for me.
Yeah. That's kind of when I first got into it. It was making pickles and salsa and things like that, and the water bath canner is a great introduction to that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And after a couple of years of just water bath canning and putting green beans in the freezer and the corn and whatnot in the freezer, it didn't quite taste the way I wanted it to, and freezing is a great way to do it if you don't have a pressure canner, but I didn't have the flavor that I wanted it to. So it was time to get the pressure canner out and learn it, and I'm very glad that I did. It's been very helpful.
Yeah.
Along with then the chickens, I think were the next step. And those came after we've had the chickens about 3.5 years now. And sell a lot of the eggs. My husband's coworkers buy those up pretty quickly, so we generally don't have any leftover eggs. But that was definitely, I think, the next step.
How many chickens do you have?
Right now we have 14, and we have 1 rooster and 13 hens, and they are on strike.
Yeah, this time of the year they do.
They are on strike. We're getting a couple a day right now, but just like you are, we are super cold here, so they are not impressed. We're afraid. I think some of them may be done with their laying process. A few of them are 3 years old. They were our original ones, so we're thinking we'll probably have to add to our flock this spring.
Yeah, you don't do any supplemental light or anything?
We don't.
Yeah.
We've just kind of let them have their winters to rest, although this has been the first winter they've really done that. The past winters, we've generally still gotten several eggs a day, and this year they are definitely protesting, or they're just done.
We had a couple real mild winters in this area the last couple of years, though. That probably helped with that.
We have. We've been very lucky, and it hasn't been too bad. But they are protesting on us this year. So I think we will add some chicks next year, which is always fun to add some new ones. So we have enough room for probably to add about 6 more. So hopefully we can add about a half a dozen more out there. And this time of year they spend their time in our garden when there's not snow on the ground, and we let them root around out there. It's a fenced-in area, so they've got an extra area to fertilize and hopefully eat some weed seeds out and and do some fertilizing for us while the garden's not planted.
Sure, that's a great idea. Do you normally free range them, or just during this part of the year?
We do. We have it's kind of separated into 2 areas. We have an area back behind our garden, which is farm fenced on one side, and then it is fenced in just by the garden fence on the other, and it's a large grassy area, and we let them out into that area while our garden is growing. And then when the garden is finished for the year, we take part of that fence down so they have that area plus the garden area. To run. So fall and winter and early spring they have a little bit of they have a larger area to run, but they also have an enclosed run that we put plastic panels up on in the winter to keep the wind off of them if it's real cold. So they do have an outdoor place to go, so they're not literally cooped up all the time. They have a little more area to spread out a little bit. When the weather's not good.
I guess I don't even know. Are you more of a suburban homestead, or are you in the country, or with acres, or what?
We are about 5 miles outside of our closest town. So we do have neighbors around us. They're not real close. They're close enough, that we could go over and see our neighbors, but they aren't right next door.
Right.
So we have about 3 or 4 acres probably on each side between us and the next home.
Okay.
So we are about 5 minutes from town, which is nice. Nearest town is about 5,000 people, so we have all the grocery and the bank and all that good stuff not too far away.
Yeah. Now, are you looking to get into any other animals with that kind of property, or are you just sticking with just chickens?
We would like to, and that's something we've talked about for a while. We have some friends of ours who raise miniature Hereford cows, which we think would be wonderful. We would have to do some rearranging of our property. The only area that we would have for them, unfortunately, is where our septic area is and our leach fields, and we know they wouldn't be good for that area. So we would have to probably move the garden and to the other side of the property, and then maybe build a smaller barn that we could house them in. So that has been talked about. This year we are planning on putting bees out. We know they won't take much room, but we are we are looking forward to putting some beehives out this year.
Yeah. Great for your garden.
Absolutely, and put that out. We do have some, we kind of a small orchard on the other side of our property.
Okay.
And we have several apple trees, pear, and cherry trees. And so we're thinking about putting the bees back in that area, too, to help with the fruit production over there.
Yeah. Now, I assume you've done your homework on those the miniature cattle. I mean, how much space do they need per animal, do you know?
That was what I was curious about, and when I was speaking to our friends who have them, because I was wondering if we had room. We have about an extra, I'd say almost an acre that's really not in use right now. We use it primarily as it's a baseball field is what it's used for most of the time. But she said it is 3 miniature Herefords per acre.
Oh, wow.
So I was pleasantly surprised to hear that we probably would have room for those. As compared to a full-size Hereford that takes 1 acre per cow.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure you still have to. It seems to me that you'd still have to give them quite a bit of supplemental feed. They wouldn't be able to just graze all the time.
Absolutely,
a lot. But yeah, that definitely is a big difference, though. And I don't know what kind of weight difference is there between those and the full-size cattle. I mean, how much meat difference would there be?
Probably quite a bit. I know when I've spent time with them and seen them, height-wise, the top of their back would come up to about not even quite my shoulder. So size-wise, they are much, much smaller and much easier to handle.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely not the amount of meat, although I've been told that the meat from them is very, very good.
Yeah. I've not had a lot of experience around those, so I've seen pictures of them, and they look just like a normal cow to me, but just a lot shorter. They just real short legs.
They would just with what's a full size are so much more intimidating. These are not nearly as intimidating, although I'm sure they're still pretty heavy but they seem to have a sweet disposition, and again, the smaller size would definitely be easier to handle.
Sure, and just less feed cost and everything else, I'm sure. So
yes.
Well, that could be an interesting avenue to go down. I'm sure lots to learn there.
Oh yeah, so it's thankfully if we have people that we could kind of pick their minds a little bit and have them help us along. Shelter right now would be our biggest thing. We don't have a full size barn, so to be able to house them and be able to move the garden around, which could definitely be done. That would definitely be a neat avenue to go. We've not tried to have any meat animals, so that would be a neat way to go. We've considered the meat chickens as well, and that could be a future thing too to give that a shot, and especially not being such a long-term time investment, that being just a 7 or 8 week investment to see how that would go.
Yeah, and you definitely have the room for that, so you could run some tractors out through there. And
yes.
Yeah, that would.
Yes, that's what we keep looking at the property, and we know that we have room to do more. And it's finding that balance. I work part-time, and my husband works full-time, and we definitely want to try more, but keeping that balance of not doing too much that we overwhelm ourselves, but we also hate to see that there's area out there we could definitely be utilizing for something more.
Still play baseball out there. You just have to be a little more careful where you step. That's all.
Yes, he would have to be careful. But he told me, he goes, you can't do that with my baseball field, but I think we could probably do something around that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I didn't mean to change the subject on you a minute ago. You were talking about your bees, and I'm curious about going back to that. Have you thought about what kind of hives you would do? Would you just do the standard hives or something different there?
We would probably do a standard hive. We've been kind of trying to do our homework and it's totally uncharted territory for both of us. So I think we'll probably just start out with like a single hive this year. I know we were looking at the unassembled hives, just kind of the kits that come with everything you need to get started. And my husband's pretty handy, and I know he could. He said he could put that together. So we just thought about starting with one and hopefully building on from there. There's so many options out there to choose from to get started there. But that's definitely, again, kind of uncharted territory. But I'm excited to get into it and see how that works out. Hopefully we can get one hive going this year and hopefully add on to it. But probably the 10 frame hives is just what we've been looking at for this year, to put one out, more of a standard hive this year. And hopefully it'll help the garden along and help the fruit trees along some as well. We hope to add a few more fruit trees out there this year. We don't have any peach trees, and hopefully having some bees out there would help get those going along as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, let's go back to your garden. What kind of things are you growing in your garden?
Oh, my.
Everything.
That is probably everything. That is probably this time of year I get so squirrely, because that's where I like to be, is out in the garden.
Yeah, me too.
It's so much fun. Definitely it starts in the early spring. We do potatoes, onions, put out the kale, the lettuce, usually in the early spring, and the spinach. And then I do try to start my own seedlings. I kind of had a bit of a fail last year and used some not good potting soil to get my seeds started. So I am going to have to buy a few more seeds this year. But we'll do the tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, squash, corn. Usually we'll put out some pumpkins. I like to try to grow some pumpkins for the nieces and nephews. They didn't quite come out. Last year, weather-wise, those did not do well for me, but I'll try them again this year. We do cabbage. Golly, pretty much a little bit of it. It seems like I dabble in a little bit of everything, and then try a new thing or two every year, just to see if, just to experiment and see what'll go good out there. But generally, anything from spring to fall that I can put out there, I will. Lots of sunflowers for the chickens. They like the seeds. So
I was going to ask you that, if you
those.
actually plant anything for just the bird feed, if you would plant anything specifically for that.
Yeah, I do. We do those big, the Russian mammoth sunflowers, and they really love the seeds from that. So once they dry, we'll just cut them down, and Sona will save some of the seeds behind, but a lot of times they just like to have those seed heads whole and give them one every couple of days, and they really like that.
I grow those too. You get an amazing amount of seeds from those.
Oh, you are. It's incredible how much, and you save a handful, and you've got plenty for the next year, too.
Oh, yeah. They grow so tall and so big. I use them almost like a screen between me and my neighbor's house. I just grow a bunch of them right there, and it just makes a wall.
Oh, absolutely, and they're so beautiful. They are so beautiful. That was I always remembered my grandmother planting those, and so that's always one thing I'm sure to get out there every year. But yeah, I do enjoy those, and we have strawberries and blackberries, and an asparagus bed that we get asparagus out of in the spring.
Okay, now you've had those established for a long time, have you?
Yeah, we planted the blackberries. We were very fortunate were here when we moved in. And so it was a nice blackberry hedge, and we were very fortunate that all the fruit trees that we have were here on the property as well when we bought the property. So we got really fortunate there. We planted the strawberries. We had a bunch, and I'm sure you remember, too, back in the winter 2014 when it just got so brutally cold, we did lose all of them. So we replanted those. We haven't had much luck with blueberries or raspberries. I just don't think we have enough acid in our soil, and I've just not been able to get enough acid in it to really get those going. I would love them, but they don't seem to like it here.
I had to import some pine needles around mine for mulch, and kept doing that, and it finally started producing pretty good.
Oh, great idea. I have not tried that.
Yeah. How about your asparagus bed? I mean, did you guys establish that, or was that something that was already there? Or?
That was something we put in, and when we had moved in, we'd lived here just a year or two, and we planted Not many. I think I just put out 10 starts just to kind of see how they do, and they did really well. So we added several more, and it's not a huge bed. It's about, I'd say, maybe 8 foot by 6 foot. It's not real big, but it does produce quite a bit of asparagus every spring for us, which is nice to have that coming back every year.
Oh yeah, I get excited about the perennials. I mean, anything you can plant and just, it just keeps giving year after year after year. I love that. I mean, it takes a little bit to establish, but once you get them going, they're just great.
Oh, it's worth it. And I know you were talking about in another podcast about your herbs and your comfrey and your herbs, and that is something else I really enjoy too, especially the perennial herbs that come back every year. We do the oregano and thyme and mint, and which goes crazy.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful where you plant all that, because it will take over.
Yes, it will very quickly. I learned that the hard way with lemon balm. That'll really go if you're not careful. And I've learned that the hard way. And chives, and what else we have out there, and the lavender that comes back every year. It's always so nice. I always look forward to all of that, and to dry the herbs and make sachets and whatnot out of them to have them all year is so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, the only good thing about those herbs taking over and getting all over your yard, I guess when you mow your yard, you get a nice smell from it.
Yeah, you do, because I hear it a lot. It's like, I smell onions. Well, that was those chives have invaded the yard.
Yeah, they do seem to find their way out there, don't they?
Yes, they do. I guess that means they're doing well, because they really like to go. So
yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot. That's I really enjoy those a lot, and I try to bring those in the house, the herbs, and use those as much through the winter as I can.
Just dehydrate. You have a dehydrator, or just?
Yeah, I have a dehydrator. It's just one of the round ones that have like the 6 stackable trays in there, but it does have a temperature regulator, which is nice. And so I dry a lot of those. I dry a lot of the I dry some of the things from the garden too. I like to dry the kale and spinach and crumble that up and hide it in things. I have my son's not crazy about it, but I hide it in a lot of things, so I'm okay. That dehydrator comes in really good for that.
Sure. Yeah, I tried I love kale raw, but when people make kale chips and things, and I'll try kale chips, and I just don't like those. But a lot of people say, "Oh, it's the best." And I'm just like, I'm not a fan.
No, it has a different. I don't know if it's the texture or what it is, but I'm with you. I'm not a fan of that either. But it's great crumbled up like in stews. I'll crumble it up and put it in stews or soups, or sneak a little of the vitamins in there, and it hides in there pretty good.
Yeah. And and that's the thing. I think so many people. And they get into homesteading, don't think about, they're all about growing and raising and doing all these things. But the longer I do this, the more I'm convinced that, preparation, cooking, using these things up is probably one of the most important skills, because if you just don't know what to do with it, it's like I said earlier, it just doesn't do you any good, and you got to find ways to use it.
Absolutely, and it's sometimes, especially like I said, you have a year of overabundance, and which is a blessing. And at the same time, you're looking at it all, going, "Oh my golly, now what do I do with it all?"
Yeah, if you don't preserve it somehow, it's not going to last very long. I'm just sitting there.
Absolutely, you put so much work into it. You just hate to waste anything,
right.
And I feel that way too. If I try to freeze it, can it, dehydrate it, I've kind of just started trying to ferment a few things. This is kind of a new thing for me, to try to make some kraut and ferment a little bit, which is fun. I have some science experiments going on, to say, in the kitchen, but so far most of it's turning out pretty well. Yeah,
sauerkraut was kind of my first thing going into the fermenting, and it's really easy. It's just, if you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to do it.
Absolutely, and it seems a little intimidating at first too. Now, I did my first batch of pickles. It wasn't real great. The kraut turned out good. I found that you can't let the pickles go quite as long, and they won't hold up. But just to see what other ways to preserve the harvest, and different flavors and different ways to cook and eat it, and it's definitely, it's an ongoing learning process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just recently, it was recently, a few months ago, learned how to make sourdough bread, and that felt like a science project too. And it really is so easy to, make a starter and do it, but it just seems so overwhelming at first before you start doing it, and it's like, oh, that was easy.
Exactly. It's just I haven't made sourdough in so long, and it is so wonderful. And my family doesn't eat gluten-free, but I do. Mm-hmm. And learning how to bake gluten-free bread, just like you said, it's like it seemed very, very intimidating. And it's like, wow, that seems really hard. But now that I've kind of stepped into it a little bit, it's like, okay, that wasn't quite as bad as what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And that's
and
how
it's
it is
a lot
on a lot
cheaper
of
than
stuff.
buying it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Absolutely.
I find though, and I think I've talked about this before. It's funny how you make these things from scratch, homemade, and it's so easy and it's so much cheaper. But at the same time, you can't just leave it sitting around like you do the store-bought stuff, and it just shows you how many preservatives are in those things because it will go bad so much quicker than store-bought stuff.
Oh, yes, it does. Within sometimes a matter of a couple of days, and
Mm-hmm.
it's surprising. It's like, oh my goodness, that bread, and after 3 days is not looking very good.
Yeah,
and it is, but it's so much better for you.
Yeah, it just makes you really, realize just what they're putting in that to make that hold up like that.
Yeah, it makes you not want it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It really does after that, because you want to know for your health what you're feeding yourself and feeding your family.
Yeah, and that's really been my reason for getting into this stuff as much as I have was for health reasons, and most people I think it's that it probably comes from a love of it from when we're kids too. I mean, like you mentioned, seeing your grandparents and being around your grandparents doing those things, and I had that experience as well, but you get away from it a little bit, but then seems like there's things that bring you back. You start hearing about the health crisis, and you hear about just the things that's going in our food and those kind of things, and it's a great time to get yourself motivated and to get back into something like this if it's something that a person loves or used to love or thought a lot about.
It is, and then, you think it's like your grandparents did, and mine as well. They planted a seed, literally, very long ago, within myself, and it didn't really come about till I was older, and it came about just a little bit at a time. But maybe I'll try to grow some flowers, and maybe we'll grow a few tomatoes, and then you realize how much better you feel along with doing those things, and it all just kind of comes together of how much it's benefiting your family and benefiting your health. You went through some health issues. I went through some several years ago, and you realize that whatever they're putting in your food at the store can really make you feel lousy.
Yep.
And how rewarding it is to be able to learn how to do it yourself. And it's an ongoing process. I feel all the time I'm wanting to try something new and see if I can make it myself, and it's so rewarding. I do make some of our soaps and cleaning supplies and things like that, and to know that you're not bringing those chemicals in your house is just such a good feeling.
And there's an endless number of things to learn too. It just seems like you could never learn it all, and it's just if you're a person who loves to learn how to do new things, there's just so many things you can do.
Oh, there is, and every time I get into a new book or a new, you find a new site, or if I'm looking around on your Facebook page and I see other homesteaders are trying different things, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. Let's try that too.
Yeah.
And there's so many things out there that it's endless.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you make your own soaps and things. How'd you get into that? The same way, you just browsing around, thought I want to try that, or?
Yeah, I have a friend of ours did a demonstration at church one evening several years ago. We were all the ladies were getting together and showing each other things that we knew how to make, just to kind of expand everybody's horizons a little bit. And she came in and she made a batch of cold processed soap. And I'm like, I had no idea that people did that. I mean, that just really kind of blew my mind. And so I made a couple batches of cold process on my own, and then found the hot process soap recipes for crock pots. And so I started doing it that way, and which I find for myself to be a little bit easier, and it's a little bit faster reward. You don't have to wait quite as long for your soap to be ready. It's done within about a day. And I couldn't believe how much more I liked it than the soap I had been buying at the store. And then I think I read the back of a body wash label. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have we been using?
Yeah, there's
and another one of those awakening moments of, I think I can do this better.
Oh yeah, the chemicals that we have around us is just unbelievable. And then when we welcome it, we bring it in, and we just make it part of our lives. And it's like, what are we doing?
Yes, until you have that aha moment of, I didn't know whatever I put on my skin went into my body and affected my health. And so that was that's an enjoyable hobby. That's something I like to do in the wintertime, and that's probably something I'll be doing this winter, is catching up on making soaps and things of that nature to kind of restock.
Household cleaners and things like that. Yeah, I find a lot of those things work just as well too. The homemade, things like laundry. We make our own laundry soap and things like that. And it's so much cheaper and it works just as well. And I just wonder why we didn't always do that. When I think about it.
I do too, and you wonder where that shift took place from where everybody did it themselves for so long, and then it just, I don't know, it just became easier to just grab it at the store, and then I thought, well, no, this really isn't easy, or I can take 5 minutes of my own time to make it, and like I said, save so much money.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
Right.
Especially to keep prices and the cost down here at the Homestead is a great thing. Means I can try out a few more of the new things I see people trying. I would definitely like to try to keep costs down as much as possible.
That's I love doing the podcast and running the website and stuff. But I think one of the things I like about it most is all the new things I learn, because I get to talk to folks like you and other people, and I think, well, I want to try that now, and I hear about all these things, and I go, oh, I got to get into that. And there's so many reasons to homestead, and of course one is the health, and that's a big one for me. But again, we mentioned it. Just the money involved in it. I mean, it can actually save you so much money living a homesteading lifestyle. And you know what? Food tastes so much better grown at home. It really does. I mean, there's all these reasons to go down this path, and it's. I just don't understand why everybody doesn't do it. I look back on my life and when I wasn't doing it, and I kind of try to figure out, okay, why wasn't I? And a lot of it is it's kind of like the golden handcuffs thing. You just get to living a life and you don't know anything else, and you kind of trap yourself into this a different kind of lifestyle.
You do, and it's easy to get. I almost use the term get stuck in a rut, but you almost kind of do. It's like you just start out doing one thing, and that's just what you keep doing all the time. It just becomes normal. And I've done the same thing and looked back and said, oh, my golly, I wish I would have started this sooner. Even though we just started small at different places we lived, and it was just really with the garden. And we just kind of always had a little garden. And I didn't do much more beyond that until we came here to this homestead, and all it took was my husband looking around the backyard going, I think we would have room for chickens. And that was kind of it. I was in, and it was done at that point.
That's all you heard was, let's get some chickens.
Full speed ahead. Yes, all I heard was chickens, and it was full speed ahead. I'm like, well, when can you start building a coop? Yeah. But it really has. It's just kind of snowballed from there. And like you said, and saving money, I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 12 years. Our son's 15, and for the first 12 years, I stayed at home all this full-time. And so I was always penny pinching and looking for ways to save. And definitely once I really got the nerve to pull out that pressure canner and learn how to use it and start, like you said, baking bread and making jellies and pickles and cleaning supplies, and learning where I could not only cut corners financially, but it was so much better for us. It really just completely snowballed from there.
Oh, yeah. It gets a hold of you and takes over, and I find it consumes a lot of my thoughts, but I'm okay with that.
I am too. I'm the same way. It's like I told you, this is my favorite topic, and it's something I could probably talk about for hours, because to me, it's just joy. It's really joyful. Yeah. And I haven't found a part of it that I don't enjoy, except for not having a heated chicken waterer, which we didn't at first, and that's probably the only part I didn't enjoy was frozen water. Other than that, everything else is wonderful.
I know, it's 0 degrees this morning. I'm out there, I got some quail out there, and all their water was froze up, and I had to get all that, unthawed and fresh water. And yeah, there's things about it. I mean, I posted in the front porch the other day in our Facebook group about the struggles of homesteading. Not everything's perfect, and people make mistakes and things go wrong.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about the good stuff, but there's plenty of bad stuff that comes along with it too, and it's hard work, and there's things you got to do. But to me, that's part of the enjoyment of it, and also even when things go wrong, you learn and you grow, and it's just part of life. Nothing's perfect, and if anything's going to be worth a value to you, it's not going to be super easy. You're going to have to put some work into it.
Absolutely. If it's not always hard work, it's not always worth doing, because that means you're not growing and stretching and learning. And I enjoyed that thread about different homesteading mistakes, and I think I've posted a few things on there myself. Yeah. I've caught myself on fire on the stove trying to do my from scratch cooking, which isn't always the best idea when you're tired, and losing baby chicks, and there's always something, but it's always learning.
Yeah.
And it seems like, though, once you make those mistakes, you seem to find a better way to do it than what you thought in the first place.
Right, and that's just all part of it.
Absolutely, it adds to all of it, and so we look to grow, and we hate to grow too fast because you don't want to make errors. I'm always afraid of that, of jumping in head first and not plan. Sometimes I over plan, I believe, and not plan as much. But I also don't want to. I hate to delay too much either. It's just trying to grow, maybe slow but steady might be the best word for that, and figure out what to, besides the bees and some trees, what to add next.
Yeah, you've got some big plans there. I mean, the possible cattle and the bees and more trees and, maybe more, maybe more bushes. I don't know, maybe blackberries, blueberries, maybe try the blueberry thing again someday. I mean, there's so many ways you can go if you've got some land to try different things,
Absolutely, definitely. And it's, sometimes it's overwhelming sometimes, but in an exciting way. It's the what can we do next, and definitely things that my husband works when he works a 24-hour shift. So when something that each of us can handle if we're here just on our own. For a day or two to be able to handle things by ourselves, which we usually do just fine, especially now that I've got an able-bodied teen who can go out there and and help out too.
Got to be careful with that, though, because then you take on a whole bunch because of that, and then one day they grow up and move out, and then you're back to, oh no, I got to do this myself.
Yeah, he threatens that sometimes, and he's like, "Mom, I'll be going to college in a couple of years." I'm like, "Oh yeah, okay, I have to bear that in mind."
Might have to downsize some things at some point and prepare for that.
Exactly, and it's just an exciting process, and we definitely enjoy it. It's we are one of the only ones of our friends, except for some of our neighbors around here, who do some similar things that get into it as much as we do. But it's for us, it's just a way of life I don't think that we would ever want to change.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that a little bit. What about the community aspect of it? I mean, do you feel like it's important to try to convince other people that these are some good ideas and things you should bring into your life?
I do. I just think that to have more of a local food movement is so important. I know I was recently reading, and actually I'm in the middle of reading a book by Joel Salatin, and just about how, and this is something I haven't dabbled into. I'm not sure if you have either, just being in the same climate and growing things in the winter. Well, you got your greenhouse, which I am envious, by the way, of your greenhouse. That is something I've pondered as well. I bet you are. It looks fantastic. But how can we feed ourselves better where we are, and instead of having to ship food from so far, and just bringing it into the community of, we can feed ourselves a little better on our own. say most of our neighbors out here, we are one of the few plots of land out here that's 2 acres. Most of our area was divided into 5-acre plots. And so most of our neighboring neighbors out in our area have 5 acres apiece, but beyond having a little garden, most of them don't use it.
Yeah.
And I would love to see our neighbors who are able to and in our area be able to grow some of their own food, even if it's just in pots of tomatoes on their back porches.
Right.
If they're not able, just to be able to that we could feed ourselves better, and save money at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not against lawns. I just think we need a little bit less lawn in the United States or even around the world, and a little bit more food. There's so much land being wasted in a lot of ways. Most people look at their lawns and say, well, I don't feel like I'm wasting it. I enjoy my lawn. I like spending time out there and doing things, and that's fine. I think having a lawn is fine, but we could utilize our space so much better and grow some food around that lawn in different places and in different ways, and the whole world would be better off for it. It would just do so much. I mean, it's got environmental benefits. Of course, it's got a benefit to society as far as feeding locally and health benefits and just so many things that I believe that it's something worth encouraging others to do. And I feel like, I guess you believe the same thing.
Oh, I do, absolutely. And I think that's one of my own kind of little bit of a hang-up when I see that area that we have on our property that isn't growing anything right now. It's just, and I think, oh my goodness, we should do something with this.
Yeah.
And but I know in time that'll happen. But you think of who can that feed? And our nearest city is Dayton, and large city is Dayton, and Dayton is considered one of the largest food deserts in the country.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I think, wow, how locally can we fix that problem?
Yeah.
For people in our city, and so I'm hoping, even though our little town and maybe some little towns around that surround Dayton can and other major cities can look at things like that, like you said, and not have quite as much lawn, grow a little more food, and help out our local neighbors.
Sure. And I've been, I really am big on promoting the urban homesteading movement too, because you have a couple acres there, but you don't need a couple acres. I mean, you can do it on a small city lot and grow a lot of your own food. And I really try to help people understand that, you don't have to live in the country. I think country life is awesome. I grew up in the country. I love the country. There's so much more you can do there, but you take what you've got and do something with it. And if it's what you've got, if you got a little lot in town with a small backyard, you can do a lot with that.
Oh, absolutely. The house that we owned before we moved here, we were in a plat on a cul-de-sac, and we had your typical neighborhood fenced-in backyard, and we weren't able to have any animals there, but we did keep a really large garden there as much as we could, and of course had to have room for the kiddo to play. But on the side of the yard, we had a large garden, and we still grew our herbs and flowers and plants there, and tried to utilize it as much as we could.
Yeah.
And I think you can do so much in a smaller space,
sure,
just as much as you could out here where we are.
Yeah, you can. I mean, it just depends on how intense you want to be about it and how much work you want to put into it. And that's, I've went down that road, and I don't expect everybody to do everything I do, but at the same time, you can do something, I think everybody should be growing a few edible plants in their lawns somewhere.
Oh yes, put out a couple of herbs, and even before we had our garden at our last home, before we were able to put the garden in, I had tomato plants growing around the foundation of my house. You just put it. I just was willing to put it wherever I could put it, and I think you can really make a lot. And even at that, if you don't have a lot of room, you can put a couple herbs on your windowsill, and you can still make a batch of soap, make your laundry soap, make your cleaners, and utilize your farmers market and help out your local farmers that you have around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't have to grow everything. And matter of fact, you can't. You can't grow and raise everything. Even on a large piece of property, it's very difficult to do everything you need. But you should utilize those local farmers and farmers markets.
Absolutely, and if I have, I had a few things this past year that did not do well. My squash did not do well, and neither did my cucumbers. And I was very thankful that our local farmers market had plenty. I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, we buy a lot at the farmers market as well. I mean, there's only, like I said, there's only so much you can do. But and you know what? Even there, you go there, you get the stuff, you bring it home, and you still make a practice out of preserving that food and doing things with it and preparing it in a way that's more healthy and what we would consider, practicing some homesteading skills with that. Just because you didn't grow it doesn't mean you can't take it to the next step.
Absolutely, and it's still it will keep you healthier, and it'll still save you money in the long run. The farmers market, I find the prices are much better than our local grocery, and you know what you're getting, and you knew who who grew it,
exactly,
and where it came from. That's so important.
I won't hold you up all day on this beautiful 0-degree day. Would you have some advice for folks getting into homesteading? Just something you'd like to tell them, maybe overcome some fears or what to start first or anything like that?
Sure, I would. With us, it was the garden. That was if you want to start somewhere, put a couple pots on your patio this year and grow some tomatoes and peppers and some basil. Or some cilantro, and grow something you can make a salad of, something you can make salsa from. Just get your hands into the dirt and just really enjoy being outside and don't be afraid. Like with myself, I was afraid of canning. I just put the horror stories aside and do your homework and follow the instructions, which is the biggest thing. Yeah. Follow the directions, check your seals on your canner, check your vents and make sure they're clean, and it's not as hard as you think. And I can promise you, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I truly mean that. I mean, I just try to start one thing at a time, or well, sometimes two.
Sometimes too much. Yeah, I got you.
I get a little anxious, but a little excited to start more than one thing. But if anybody can, anybody can do it. If I can, I have no doubt about it. Just start where, see what sparks your interest. If it's a garden, or if it's having just a couple of chickens in your backyard, or like yourself having some quail or some rabbits. If you're in a smaller space, rabbits are awesome. We did have some at one point. We had just as a learning project for our son. He kept some rabbits just for responsibility purposes, really. Just to start out, and just do it. Definitely don't wait any longer. If something sparks your interest, give it a try.
I think that's really good advice. And what I find is if you can get somebody to plant one or two things and just start, like we talked about earlier, it kind of becomes an addiction, and you want more and more and more. And next thing you know, you turn into a kind of a nutcase like me, and you want to turn your entire little backyard into a farm. So, but that's okay. I think it's got some great benefits. So
it is okay, and I think it's one of the best hobbies you can have. And
yeah, I do too.
And I'm the same way. I think we are of the same mindset, and it's and I say it is so enjoyable. I can't imagine not doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jill, I'll let you go, but I will encourage folks to join the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. You're in there hanging out and talking all the time, and we're sharing our information and receiving a bunch as well. And I would encourage people to pop in there and get to know you better by having a chat with you.
Well, that sounds great. I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
It's been great. Thanks, Jill, for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Harold.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I know you enjoyed that conversation I had with Jill. There was a lot of just great nuggets in that conversation. Just hearing about what she was doing, but also just the encouragement that she gives to those who are thinking about getting into homesteading, and just her attitude towards homesteading and wanting to be a learner and somebody who experiments and tries new things and just wants to ever expand her homesteading skills and knowledge. And I just love her passion for homesteading. And, Jill had mentioned to me before we started recording that she was probably thinking about getting back to blogging about her homestead. And I encourage her to do that because it sounds like she has a lot to offer, and I enjoy hearing about the things she's doing, and I'm sure she would have a lot of great pictures and things like that to add to a blog that we could all look at. So if she does that, Jill, if you do that, you give me that link when you start that, and I will share it on my page, because I would be happy to send some traffic your way for your blog and let folks benefit from that. Also, I want to encourage you folks to go be part of the Homestead Front Porch Facebook group. It's the official Facebook group of the Modern Homesteading Podcast. That sounded like a sales pitch, didn't it? No, go be a part of that. There is some great folks hanging out in there. And you know what? We talk about homesteading, and we talk about other things too. I mean, we're just part of each other's lives in that group, and I enjoy the conversations and the time spent in there. And I haven't been in there as much here recently because I've been working so much. I've had some long hours, but I get in there every chance I get and chat it up, and I enjoy reading all the posts and things in there. So search Facebook for Homestead Front Porch and ask to join, and we'll get you in there. It's a closed group, but that's all you have to do to join is ask. Also, I've been trying once a week at least to do a live video event at my website at smalltownhomestead.com/live. We've had a couple so far. I'm actually doing one tonight as I'm recording this here in just a few hours. I'm going to be doing one on building a fodder system for feeding small livestock. It's going to be an inexpensive, real easy to do, real easy build on how to put together one. So I hope you'll come in for that. Probably by the time you get this podcast, it might be too late, but there will be a replay there. You can watch the replay, or you can even go to YouTube and watch it there. If you go to YouTube, I would encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's going to be a lot of those going up, hopefully, over the next several weeks, months. And you know what? YouTube's not something I've really utilized like I want to, and I'm going to start doing that. That's kind of one of my New Year's resolutions this year, to really start doing a lot more with YouTube, do a lot more live video and even recorded videos. And I would encourage you to go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find that at smalltownhomestead.com. Just go to the top there, and there's an icon that will take you to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate you all joining me on this podcast today, and join the front porch and get a hold of Jill. I think you'll enjoy talking to her. She's got a lot of great advice in there all the time. So thanks, and happy homesteading, and we'll talk to you next week. God bless.
Thanks for listening. To see the show notes for this podcast or listen to other podcast episodes, go to smalltownhomestead.com. There you can also read our blog, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+, and take advantage of the many resources we make available to help you along in your homesteading journey. Please share this podcast and help us to carry out our mission of helping others to homestead today for a better tomorrow.